इस कार्यक्रम के प्रायोजक नेशनल पेंशन सिस्टम एनपीएस। अपना बेहतर कल सुनिश्चित करने के लिए एनपीएस जरूरी है। मानसिक शांति के साथ साथ एनपीएस जीवन में संतुष्टि भी लाता है। 18 से 70 वर्ष की आयु के बीच का कोई भी भारतीय नागरिक और कॉर्पोरेट कर्मचारी एनपीएस से जुड़ सकता है। किसी भी पीओपी जैसे बैंकों, एनबीएफसी के जरिए या npstrust.org.in के ऑनलाइन प्लेटफॉर्म के जरिए आप अपना एनपीएस खाता खोल सकते हैं। सुरक्षित भविष्य के लिए एनपीएस जरूरी है।
Welcome to Market Mantra, our program in which we give you a complete update on the economic news of the day. I am Anubha Rohatgi and with me is my co-anchor in Hindi, Vibhuti Mishra.
धन्यवाद अनुभा। नमस्कार श्रोताओं, मार्केट मंत्र में आप सभी श्रोताओं का स्वागत है। इस कार्यक्रम में हम आर्थिक, व्यापारिक और शेयर बाजार की ताज़ा खबरें आपके लिए लेकर आए हैं और हम उन पर चर्चा भी करेंगे। हमारे साथ चर्चा के लिए आज स्टूडियो में आमंत्रित हैं वरिष्ठ आर्थिक पत्रकार के बद्रीनाथ। बद्रीनाथ जी, मार्केट मंत्र में आपका स्वागत है।
धन्यवाद।
और सबसे पहले हेडलाइंस के साथ मेरी सहयोगी अनुभा रोहतगी।
Thank you, Vibhuti. Key domestic indices gain around 1%. Sensex closes at 71,060. Nifty settles at 21,454. Government allows direct listing of securities by public Indian companies on international exchanges of GIFT IFSC. And Brent crude trades at $79.39 per barrel in global crude market.
प्रमुख घरेलू शेयर बाजारों में करीब 1% की वृद्धि। सेंसेक्स 71,060 और निफ्टी 21,454 पर बंद। सरकार ने जीआईएफटी आईएफएससी के अंतर्राष्ट्रीय एक्सचेंजों पर सार्वजनिक भारतीय कंपनियों की प्रतिभूतियों की सीधी लिस्टिंग की अनुमति दी। और वैश्विक बाजार में ब्रेंट कच्चा तेल $39.39 प्रति बैरल पर कारोबार कर रहा था। और सबसे पहले शेयर बाजारी खबरें। वैश्विक शेयर बाजारों से सकारात्मक संकेतों के बीच प्रमुख घरेलू सूचकांक करीब 1% ऊपर बंद हुए। सेंसेक्स 690 अंक या 0.98% बढ़कर 71,060 पर और निफ्टी 215 अंक या 1.01% बढ़कर 21,454 पर बंद हुए। बीएसई के व्यापक बाजार में मिड कैप इंडेक्स में 1.71% और स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स में 1.72% की वृद्धि हुई।
Key domestic indices closed around 1% up today amid positive cues from global share markets. The Sensex surged 690 points or 0.98% to close at 71,060 and the Nifty rose 215 points or 1.01% to finish at 21,454. In the broader market at the BSE, the mid-cap index rose 1.71% and the small-cap index gained 1.72%. In the Sensex index, which is a pack of 30 companies, shares of 25 companies appreciated, while stocks of 6 companies declined. Tata Steel surged 3.88%, Power Grid climbed 3.5% and HCL Tech rose 3.44%. On the other hand, ICICI Bank fell 2.94%, Axis Bank dipped 2.77%, and Asian Paint slipped 1.91%. In sectoral indices at the BSE, except the BankX index, which lost 0.18%, all 19 other sectors witnessed gains. Telecommunication sector surged 3.57% and the metal index gained 3.21%. Oil and gas rose 2.17% and commodities added 2.01%. The overall market breadth was positive as shares of 2,451 companies appreciated, while those of 1,343 declined. Shares of a total of 90 companies remained unchanged.
और इसी बीच रुपया का हाल जानते हैं। अंतर बैंकिंग विदेशी मुद्रा बाजार में रुपया आज डॉलर के मुकाबले 83 रुपये 13 पैसे प्रति डॉलर के स्तर पर बंद हुआ। 6 प्रमुख मुद्राओं की तुलना में डॉलर की मजबूती दर्शाने वाला डॉलर सूचकांक दिन के कारोबार में गिरावट के साथ 103.12 पर था।
Mr. Badrinath, we saw the markets have recouped today after 2 days when they fell, and today after 2 days they ended in green. But there was a lot of volatility in the market throughout the day, and this rebound that we saw in the markets was almost towards the fag end. What are the reasons for that?
Two things we need to understand. One is that this volatility cannot be limited to a day or two. because there are several factors. One is what will happen in the Chinese stock market is one big reason, and the companies are expecting a rescue package.
Yes.
Because both the Shanghai Stock Exchange as well as the Hong Kong Stock Exchange have been experiencing almost a 2 to 3 year rout, and virtually the stock markets are plummeting in a big way there. Number one. Number two, the issue is also that many of the companies are trying to book profits at this because the premiums are very good and they may be booking profits. Third is the yields in the United States market, in the dollar market, is also doing good, and the returns are likely to be improving there. So if all these three factors are taken into consideration, perhaps my guess is this volatility will extend 1 or 2 days more before it stabilizes at a lower level.
Coming to specific sectors, we've been seeing that the banking sector specifically has been the laggard. It has been taking a hit today also. That was the only index which ended in red. All the other sectors were gaining. So do you think it's because of the we've been seeing the results that have been coming in, the kind of results that especially one of the biggest banks, the kind of results that have come in that could be the reason? Or is that the reason that why the banking sector is, and the BankX index is also in the red?
My guess is Indian banking sector is one of the most stable sectors if you compare globally. But at the same time, it's possible that one of the private banks, one of the largest listed, public sector banks, if they have reported some modest, not
up to the expectation results.
The market expectations is like the cloud.
Yes.
You want to be on the cloud 9, is it? So not that every bank can deliver that, but definitely the bank's administration, bank's products and services have been streamlined in a very big way in the last 5-6 years, and the non-performing assets that we used to talk about in a big way earlier, the balance sheets have been cleaned up in a big way. Third is inflation is under control, or at least manageable. And the projections for future are also right. So my guess is also a stage which needs to, it will pass over this stage, and perhaps the banking sector, I don't see any major concern as of now. As like you used to see in many of the European banks, that some bank may fall one
Yes.
day and that kind of a stuff, or there is a run-in on the bank somewhere in the world. No, that kind of a situation we have not seen in India, and I don't expect that to be seen, because the Reserve Bank of India has been doing a fantastic job on the bank's administration.
जी बद्रीनाथ जी, बैंकिंग सेक्टर जो है स्टेबल है. आज की जो शेयर बाजार के जो कारण हैं अब हमने आपसे जानकारी वो ले ली है. अगर आने वाले दिनों की बात करें, कमिंग डेज की बात करें, तो जो भारतीय शेयर बाजार है उसका रुख कैसा रहेगा, क्या लगता है आपको?
बैंकिंग सेक्टर का
नहीं, भारतीय शेयर बाजार जो एक स्टॉक एक्सचेंज है उसका, हाँ जी,
शेयर बाजार, आई मस्ट से दैट द स्टॉक मार्केट्स आर ए बिट ब्लोटेड and the premiums are 2x, and there will be a lot of profit booking as well. So it doesn't mean that even if there is a couple of 1,000 points which are going down or sliding, it must not be a concern for either the finance minister or the Reserve Bank of India governor or the SEBI chairman. For the simple reason that markets are very healthy, markets are well regulated, and there are no payments crisis or any such issue that we have seen in the early 2000 and all that. And now we have hit a stage where there have been stability in the market in a big way. And secondly, you don't expect always a profit to be every day booked by every counter and all that. So this shouldn't be much of a concern for the investors who normally, if they are stayed invested for a long term or a medium term, there shouldn't be any problem with them.
And at this point, let's go into a short commercial break.
अपने सुरक्षित भविष्य के साथ साथ वित्तीय स्थिरता के लिए भी एनपीएस पर भरोसा करें। 18 से 70 वर्ष की आयु के बीच का कोई भी भारतीय नागरिक और कॉर्पोरेट कर्मचारी एनपीएस से जुड़ सकता है। किसी भी पीओपी जैसे बैंकों, एनबीएफसी के जरिए या npstrust.org.in के ऑनलाइन प्लेटफॉर्म के जरिए आप अपना एनपीएस खाता खोल सकते हैं। सुरक्षित भविष्य के लिए एनपीएस जरूरी है।
Welcome back to Market Mantra, where today we are joined in studio by senior journalist K.A. Badrinath. Moving on, the Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance has amended Foreign Exchange Management Non-Debt Instruments Rules 2019 and notified the direct listing of equity shares of companies incorporated in India on international exchanges scheme. This is in pursuance of the announcement on July 28, 2023 by the Union Minister for Finance and Corporate Affairs, Shrimati Nirmala Sitharaman, to enable direct listing of Indian companies at GIFT, International Financial Services Center, IFSC exchanges in the first phase. Simultaneously, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs has issued companies listing of equity shares in permissible jurisdictions rules 2024. This will provide an overarching regulatory framework to enable public Indian companies to issue and list their shares in permitted international exchanges. As of now, the framework allows unlisted public Indian companies to list their shares on an international exchange. SEBI is in the process of issuing the operational guidelines for listed public Indian companies. The international stock exchanges at GIFT IFSC under the regulatory provision of IFSC-A, namely India International Exchange and NSE International Exchange, have been currently prescribed as permitted stock exchanges under the rules in the scheme. Mr. Badrinath, how important, how significant is this initiative from the point of view of Indian capital markets, especially the startups, especially the companies who are engaged in the sunrise and technology sector?
This is a very positive move from the finance minister. The announcement was much earlier, sometime in June or July. I think July 18
Yes.
is what your news bulletin says. So my guess is that twofold. One, it will provide an alternative avenue for startups and venture capital funds, even VCFs, want to access global markets. So these two can perhaps access funds from abroad, list themselves there in the equity market there, and they can access, for example, if there is a pharmaceutical company or there is a biotechnology company or which can add value by listing abroad. This is a perfect way of doing it. Number one. Number two, earlier, the individuals used to do, across the border, trading or selling and buying with an upper limit or a cap. Now, the companies, small unlisted companies basically, can now access the equity funds from the global markets, but a list of stock exchanges have been given out. Only on those stock exchanges, these startups or sunrise sector, high value, high technology companies can go into the space. Second. Third, my guess is as a logical extension, the listed companies will follow.
Yes.
That SEBI will have to come up with the guidelines and norms. Which of the listed companies will be allowed? Will it be just the the top 30 companies, or will it be what are the kind of companies we want to allow them to access internationally? And apart from the individual cases, what I guess is the integration of Indian stock markets globally will also be on the upswing, which is going to happen over a period of time. It can't happen overnight. So I think there's a gradual progression towards integration of our own markets with the global stock exchanges and global economy. And also it provides opportunity for the foreign investor
Yes.
to do value picking And say, for example, if there is a unicorn in India doing very well and they want to have they want to invest in this company, most welcome. There are so many unicorns these days with $1 billion plus kind of valuations. So this will be the perfect way of doing it. And also the benchmarking of these funds, benchmarking of these companies in terms of valuation will be very good once these large investors from abroad pick up even smaller stakes. Then valuations will go up in a big way.
Right.
एशिया और यूरोप के बाजार का हाल जानते हैं। एशियाई बाजार आज मिले जुले रुख के साथ बंद हुए। हांगकांग का हैंग सेंग 3.4%, चीन का शंघाई कंपोजिट इंडेक्स 1.8% और सिंगापुर का स्टेट्स टाइम्स इंडेक्स 0.6% बढ़ गया। उधर जापान का निक्केई 0.8% और दक्षिण कोरिया का कोस्पी 0.4% गिर गया। दिन के कारोबार में यूरोपीय बाजार बढ़त के साथ कारोबार कर रहे थे। अंतिम समाचार मिलने तक जर्मनी का डेक्स 1.8%, फ्रांस का कैक 0.8% और लंदन का फुटसी 0.4% की बढ़त के साथ कारोबार कर रहे थे। अब बद्रीनाथ जी, अब बस ये हाँ आज हर तरफ से अच्छी खबर आई, लेकिन जापान और का निक्केई और जो कोस्पी है वो थोड़ा बहुत इसमें जो है गिरावट आई। मतलब everywhere is good news, but Nikkei and Kospi were in negative zone. Slightly they were in negative zone. How do you see this?
Two things. More than how I see Japan and South Korea, most interesting is how Hang Seng and Shanghai Composite Index have surged. That may be because they are expecting, the investors are expecting a rescue package from the government of China, where about 2 trillion yuan are expected to be pumped into the market for seeing the at least stemming the slide in the last 2-3 years that we have seen. And especially both Hong Kong and Shanghai have lost the sheen that they used to have. Most of the European companies to get listed on Hong Kong and Shanghai and feel very good about it.
Right.
And
yes, please continue.
Please. And this seems to be an issue which is coming. But also there is a feeling in the global investor community, if you see most of the analyst reports, that this 2 trillion yuan's package may not be enough in its peanuts.
Right.
Because about $6 trillion worth decline seems to have happened in the last 2-3 years in both Hong Kong and Shanghai. So how do you make up for that? It is a simple issue that everyone is talking about. So if the Hong Kong and Shanghai, both of the markets are not very attractive for the global market or investors, the best bet for them will be India and Mumbai, where you have political stability, you have a well-regulated market, you have a proactive SEBI, and that kind of stuff.
You've been, of course, like you said, that because there are reports that the Chinese authorities are considering a package, and you said 2 trillion yuan's package, which is there to stabilize its stock market. So,
it translates about 249 I think it's billion dollars or something.
So the point is that, the markets there, the industry there, economy, they had been, asking for, or rather they had been looking up to the government to announce major economic stimulus for quite a while. So what is happening now? Although it's a good news, but what is happening now that the government has now decided to come out with this package, the Chinese authorities?
And two things must be working on it because very little clear upfront information comes out from China.
Yes.
Very credible information. But still, whatever little reports that I have read across the global networks, what I think is that if it goes and if there is a big rout in both the markets, then because these two markets there are most of the top 30 or 50 Chinese companies are listed on those markets. And their valuations will go down in a big way. There is likely to be a worry because debt overweightage is likely to also happen there and expose the raw nerve in most of the Chinese companies there in both Shanghai as well as Hong Kong, because the disclosure norms till now have not been impacted by the Chinese Iron Hand administration. So this is something which we need to look at carefully.
जी, अब समय अल्प विराम का है, जल्द वापस लौटते हैं।
जीवन में स्थिरता के साथ साथ एनपीएस आपको आर्थिक आजादी भी देता है। 18 से 70 वर्ष की आयु के बीच का कोई भी भारतीय नागरिक और कॉर्पोरेट कर्मचारी एनपीएस से जुड़ सकता है। किसी भी पीओपी जैसे बैंकों, एनबीएफसी के जरिए या npstrust.org.in के ऑनलाइन प्लेटफॉर्म के जरिए आप अपना एनपीएस खाता खोल सकते हैं। सुरक्षित भविष्य के लिए एनपीएस जरूरी है।
Welcome back to Market Mantra. Let's move on to the US markets. 2 out of the 3 major US indices witnessed gains yesterday. While the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell 0.25%, the Nasdaq Composite Index gained 0.4%, and the S&P 500 rose 0.3% and hit an all-time high. Mr. Badrinath, S&P hit an all-time high. What are the reasons for that? This gain that we are seeing in the US markets? Do you think it's because now the markets have accepted that the US Fed is not going to announce the rate cuts anytime soon?
My guess is there should be some amount of reconciliation there that, there may not be further cuts, and also elections are around the corner in less than a year. This year we have to go, US is going for election, and the Republicans and Democrats are going to do big there. And one is that. Second is the returns already coming in from the debt instruments or the gilts that we call in India. The debt paper there is, the return seems to be on the rise. Second, that would have impacted S&P 500 to move up. That is second. Third point would be that despite all this, the stability in the US administration is another point, because it's a bipartisan kind of a administration that you have in Washington DC, and there the Federal Reserve holds very strong. And also their stock market regulator has imbibed a lot of good global practices, and my guess is this will continue for a while unless there is something heavenly that is going to happen and is going to tumble all through.
Right.
So that seems to be the way.
The other thing I want to draw your attention to is that the European Central Bank is going to have its meeting tomorrow. And what are your expectations from it? Because a lot of analysts are saying that, President Christine Lagarde is going to hold on to, she will not announce any, as in the US, no rate cuts are going to be announced, and, so it's going to be status quo.
In all over Europe, at least major economies in Europe, inflation is a sticky issue.
Right.
If you, of course, you cannot raise the interest rates there in a jiffy. That is one. But, bringing about a cut at this point of time may not also be very possible. And henceforth, I have seen those reports that, there might not be a rate cut by the European Central Bank and all that. So if I know Madame Lagarde well, perhaps that is given that there may not be a cut unless the entire monetary policy committee like we have in India, in the Reserve Bank of India, decides to go the other way. But my guess is more or less US and ECB will continue to be on the same line, and perhaps the cue must have been taken from the US Federal Reserve that we wouldn't go for a.
And while we're talking of the US Fed and the ECB, even RBI's MPC meeting is, early next month. What are your expectations from there?
Oh, that's a big question. Tricky one at that. In the sense that, in the last few months you have seen what has happened. So, the growth expectations that the Reserve Bank last governor said is 7%.
Yes.
And your inflation is within, even retail inflation as well as the wholesale inflation are in manageable limits.
Yes.
The market would expect that you want a rate cut and all that. Will the Reserve Bank Governor Shaktikanta Das go the market way or keep his cards very close to his chest is
Yes.
a question that we need to look at. Maybe there's little more time perhaps for deliberation, and it's a 3-day affair, virtually the monetary committee meeting and all that. So it would take time. I guess they must be in the formulative stages as to see and try and build consensus there as such.
Moving on to commodities, oil prices were steady today as a Chinese economic stimulus package and geopolitical tensions were offset by concerns over tepid demand and a strong dollar. In intraday trade, Brent crude was trading 0.21% lower at $79.38 per barrel, while the US West Texas Intermediate crude was also trading down 0.15% at $74.26 per barrel when reports last came in. And Mr. Badrinath, do you expect, we've been seeing that the international oil, crude oil prices have been below the $80 mark for a while now. Do you expect here in India for these, this kind of international crude prices to be converted into a lower or cut in the pump prices here?
No, I don't expect too much of there is in the retail prices there has been stability here. And even if there are marginal adjustments, the government has no role as of now. It's by the Indian Oil and the oil companies to decide what needs to be done at the retail pump prices. That is one. Second, having said that, the finance minister's position has been very comfortable as of this year because the direct taxes have been good and GST collections have been fine. The current account deficit is not virtually nil or very minimal thing, manageable position. So the point I'm trying to make is that, even if you have to cut, either you give it directly in the form of a rate cut, allow the rate cut to happen, or let the oil companies do it on their own, or, you pass it on through some development projects to the people of this country. So my guess is the finance minister, because anyway the budget is around on February 1. So do you want to meddle with the rates now or not is a question that oil companies will also think twice before doing so.
Right.
जल्दी से सोना और चांदी का हाल जान लेते हैं। मल्टी कमोडिटी एक्सचेंज में आज सोना फरवरी अनुबंध के लिए बढ़त के साथ कारोबार कर रहा था। सोना 200 रुपये बढ़त के साथ 62,160 रुपये प्रति 10 ग्राम पर कारोबार कर रहा था। मार्च अनुबंध वाली चांदी भी 718 रुपये की तेजी के साथ 71,675 रुपये प्रति किलोग्राम पर कारोबार कर रही थी। वैश्विक बाजारों में दिन के कारोबार में अंतिम समाचार मिलने तक सोना कॉमेक्स पर तेजी के साथ $2,052 और 90 सेंट प्रति औंस पर कारोबार कर रहा था। चांदी भी बढ़त के साथ $22.87 प्रति औंस पर कारोबार कर रही थी।
And that's all we have time for in this edition of Market Mantra. Thank you so much, Mr. K. Badrinath, for coming to the studio and sharing your views and opinions with us.
Dhanyawad. Thank you.
And before we close, a look at the headlines. Key domestic indices gain around 1%. Sensex closes at 71,060. Nifty settles at 21,454. Government allows direct listing of securities by public Indian companies on international exchanges of GIFT IFSC. And Brent crude trades at $79.39 per barrel in global crude market. And that's it in this edition of Market Mantra. Namaskar.
नमस्कार।
एक आकर्षक निवेश के साथ साथ एनपीएस समानता का भी साधन है। 18 से 70 वर्ष की आयु के बीच का कोई भी भारतीय नागरिक और कॉर्पोरेट कर्मचारी एनपीएस से जुड़ सकता है। किसी भी पीओपी जैसे बैंकों, एनबीएफसी के जरिए या npstrust.org.in के ऑनलाइन प्लेटफॉर्म के जरिए आप अपना एनपीएस खाता खोल सकते हैं। सुरक्षित भविष्य के लिए एनपीएस जरूरी है। इस कार्यक्रम के प्रायोजक नेशनल पेंशन सिस्टम एनपीएस। अपना बेहतर कल सुनिश्चित करने के लिए एनपीएस जरूरी है।